that seek to really dissolve the functioning of the government, the deep state, as they call it, within 6 months. There is no deep state. There's dysfunction, there's bureaucracy, there's inefficiency.
Steve, there's no deep state.
No.
In this video, Patrick Bet-David speaks with crazy person Steve Schmidt of the Lincoln Project. Much to Patrick Bet-David's surprise, Steve Schmidt claims that there's no such thing as the deep state. With that, let's watch Patrick Bet-David eviscerate this statement by schooling Steve Schmidt.
2015 and 2016. And either way, both sides, the American people get this. They completely intuitively understand it's all bullshit. Whether it's Menendez in the old country, Dianne Feinstein passed away right before we came on air. I was actually talking to someone about this yesterday, right? Like the notion, this person who's a legitimately important figure, right, in American political history for women, how she came to power, completely stripped of her dignity in the last 5 years of her service, that this is what she'll be remembered for, is sitting up there with no faculties, no personal agency. So we have a massive problem. You have a belligerence in the media that you see assert itself every time someone says, well, 80% of the country doesn't want Trump or Biden. So there's a lot of brokenness. I understand it. But the issue with Trump that's front and center, it has to be, are the intimations towards violence, towards chaos, and the assassination baiting of a guy who spent his entire career wearing the cloth of the
quick follow-up. It would seem to me your biggest issue would be people clinging to power. Let me explain. Trump first and foremost, but you named names. You named Dianne Feinstein, clinging to power. She was clearly a vegetable, but she wouldn't step down. Bob Menendez, clearly corrupt, clinging to power, right? Mitch McConnell, 80 years old, can't even function, clinging to power. Your biggest fear is Donald Trump clinging to power. You used the George Washington example. He's not King George. He's not Julius Caesar. Go deep, go dark here for a second. He clings to power. Let's say he actually wins or even doesn't win this next election, but clings to power, assumes he wins. How dark could it possibly get? What's your biggest fear?
There's a plan. It's on the table by elements at the Claremont Institute that seek to really dissolve the functioning of the government, the deep state, as they call it, within 6 months. There is no deep state. There's dysfunction, there's bureaucracy, there's inefficiency.
Steve, there's no deep state.
No.
Come on, Steve.
No.
There's no deep state.
What is the deep state?
This guy, in my opinion, I've watched this whole interview, is one of the most unhinged guests that Patrick Bet-David has ever had on. He's a full-blown rhino, never Trumper, part of the Lincoln Project, that are essentially Republicans that hate Donald Trump. This guy's TDS is at like Joe Scarborough, Bill Maher, Rachel Maddow, Joy Reid levels. This guy like comes across to me as an insane person. He's insanely angry too, and it can't be healthy for him to live like that. I mean, his blood pressure has to be through the roof 24 hours a day. But what he said so far, I can't argue with. I want Mitch McConnell out. I want Nancy Pelosi out. They've made so much effing money, and that's why they're clinging to power. They have generational wealth. They've gotten rich off of being politicians. How about we get rid of them and get some people in there that actually don't just want to play games and they want to help the people of the United States. Now, I know as far as politicians are concerned, they're few and far between, but you can't do any worse than the two examples I gave. So let's at least give someone else a shot, someone under the age of 85. Anyway, let's get back to the video.
Okay, so what do you think when you think about what World Economic Forum Klaus Schwab is doing and his campaign Build Back Better being the same campaign, identical word as Biden's? What do you think about when you see what some of these ESG guys are doing? You know, you got these, State Street, Vanguard, Larry Fink, BlackRock. They own all these stocks, and these 88% of S&P 500 top 3 shareholders is their institutional money. And they're imposing their power over these CEOs to do what they need to do for, And now recently they're stepping away from it. There's a lot of people today that I know when you're sitting here going through some of this stuff, and I want to listen to you because I want to know where your motive is. I want to know where your frustration lies. And, I want to comment on a few of these things and then, give a question back to you. You said Trump being, he was raised with a father with money. His father bailed him out, gave him money and all this other stuff, right? I saw kids who grew up poor, and I saw kids who grew up with money. The kids that grew up with money had more temptations to do stupid things than the kids who grew up poor. Now, what do I mean by this? They're spoiled brats. They're annoying. They're obnoxious. They're always getting bailed out. They never get suspended. If they do, the dad comes in and buys it out. You're not going to see a kid with a rich dad getting, what's the word, not suspended, when you're getting kicked out of school, expelled. It's just not going to happen, right? You're going to get these things. So the way I see it with Trump is, here's a guy that had access to all the drugs, anything he ever wanted to do. He had access to all the alcohol, anything he wanted to do. He had access to all of it. And you mean to tell me this guy never did drugs? He never did alcohol? And with all the temptations of the money that his dad had, he takes whatever the dad gave him, whether it's nothing, $1 million, or $14 million. I've heard all these 3 numbers, right? Even if it's the $14 million that his dad gave him, you take that $14 million and you turn it into $2 billion, $3 billion, whatever the number is. Democrats will say it's closer to $2 billion. Some will say it's $3 billion. Let's say $2 billion, okay? Do you do that? How many kids do that? Not a lot of them. It's not easy to do. So for me, I understand the establishment thing, and then to come to today when you said something about, this guy got up on stage and he said, the only way the election will be accurate is if I win, right? Not if I lose. If I lose, the election is a fraud and da-da-da-da. Okay, fine, cool. Then the hypocrisy comes out is if he only said it and that was the issue, okay, what are you doing? Can't be saying something like this. Do you know how many videos were taken down for repeating what Hillary Clinton said in 2016?
If you like watching videos like this one, like and subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. Let's get back to the video.
That the election was rigged. You know how many videos were taken down? 0. YouTube didn't take down any videos that they said 2016 election was rigged and Russia collusion. 0 videos. They all stayed up. Why? So think about the voter who, you're like, this voter, right? This voter is kind of like, you know what? F you, okay? You want to do this? I don't like seeing people being taken advantage of. That voter is sitting there and saying, I'm sorry, dude. I voted for, let's just say a person says that they voted for Hillary, okay? But she said the same thing Trump said. 3.5 years later, she funded it, and now we're supposed to sit there and say he's the bad character, not her? You want me to believe that? I think there's a big community as well. I guess what I want to bring back to you is, you know how typically it's like Republican versus Democrat? Okay, great. Then sometimes it's liberal policies versus conservative policies. Great. And then sometimes it's, anti-establishment versus establishment, right? And you said earlier when Trump was running, what Trump was able to do is bring public issues that nobody was talking about, the drug issue or the border issue. Nobody was thinking about that. Boom, he put it front and center. Oh, damn, this is really an issue, right? He made a non-talked about issue, talked about issue. Then we're all looking at it saying, this guy's right. Let's build a wall. No one ever talked about building a wall. Let's build a wall.
I'm sure this guy knows a lot more about politics than I do. But it's very scary to me that as involved as this guy is, that he really wants to deny that there's a deep state. ESG alone and DEI ESG to a greater extent is an attempt to control people, to control companies, and make them behave the way a certain group of people want them to behave. Do you think those are ordinary citizens, or do you think they are people with wealth that most average Americans can't imagine? And so if they have that kind of wealth, what's the benefit to them? It is power. There are always greater powers that be that all the money they make and all the power they have, it is never enough. I'll give you an example that I just can't unsee, and that's the racial division in this country. Don't you think there are powers that be that want us all arguing with one another over race, religion, sexuality, whatever it is? Because if we're all arguing about that and focused about that, we're not paying attention to what they're doing. That's the tactics of the deep state to me. And to me, it's not crazy to suggest there's a deep state. It's crazy to deny there is one. It's not a conspiracy theory. I think it's pretty well established now. And again, just more evidence, the bias of the censorship that's applied to certain individuals, but not others. An average American can't make that happen. Very, very powerful people with a lot of money can make that happen. George Soros has a lot of power in getting people elected. He can dump more money than anyone can imagine into a campaign, and it won't bother him a bit. And I mean, this is a fact. I don't think I'm making this up. He will spend money on finding dirt on the other candidate in an effort to smear them. So not just money, but they'll use dirty tactics. Why would George Soros care about funding so many district attorneys in this country in areas he doesn't even live? Because he has a larger agenda. Anyway, I could go on about this all day. Let's wrap up the video.
Why shouldn't we build a wall? We never thought about this. We should do this. We should do that. So the part that gets me to question, I'm listening to you and I'm like, this guy sounds like a reasonable guy that he can reason. You can reason. You're sharp. There's a reason why all these guys have hired you over the years. And you say your parents voted Trump. They supported Trump even with the bomber. You got that list, whatever. Even your parents still voted for him. There has to be something deeper to get you guys, when I say you guys, you, Weaver, your partners, who at that time, you're no longer with them. I know 2021 you resigned, but there has to be something where it got you guys to team up against this guy that's deeper than just, what he's talking about. There was a real, even the documentary, the 5-part documentary series that you feel hate. You guys hate this guy. You guys were not, you want to do whatever you could to destroy this guy from winning.
Yeah, it's too bad we didn't get more of Steve Schmidt talking, because Patrick Bet-David's right. Again, this guy's TDS is so out of control. He despises him. Like, he wants to do everything in his power and wants everybody else in their power to do whatever they can to destroy him. Politically, first off, but just the way he talks, and it's not evident from this clip, I think personally as well, like they're the type that would be rejoicing if something beyond politics, something really bad happened to Donald Trump that destroyed his life. But I guess the conclusion is that is the type of person that would say, oh, there's no deep state. To me, it's just a ridiculous statement. But we want to hear from you. What do you all think? Am I crazy? Is there not a deep state? Or if you think there's a deep state, how do you describe it? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, as always, really appreciate you watching, and we will see you on the next one.